Good day and welcome. In this video we are looking at the amazing career of wildlife photographer and filmmaker Alan Root. And it's also an inspiring tale of how you can have lots of failure when you're young and go on to do great things. After the Second World War, Alan's family moved from Marlborough town in England to Nairobi in Africa. He was to become a Kenyan citizen. And Alan Root is perhaps the most prone injury cameraman of his time. In his time, he's lost a finger to a puff adder. He's had bite marks from a leopard on one buttock, and then which nicely matched some grazing on the other side from a hippo. He was bitten by a gorilla and almost lost a leg to a hippopotamus. Alan left school very early and, in his own words, wasn't very academic, so he wasn't going to be able to get a job as a vet or as a marine biologist or anything quite like that. Alan picked up his 8mm camera at the time and started to film. But focusing and photography came very naturally to him. But Alan had a talent. He had an eye for a story as well. The best wildlife documentaries today are story-driven. And Alan and his wife Joan virtually invented wildlife story-driven films. Take a look at this.
The Roots spent their honeymoon filming in the bush. It was the beginning of a project to reveal to the world an Africa different from white hunters seeking the excitement of the kill. The Roots' Africa was delicate, beautiful, pristine, and complex.
We saw nature holistically. We never made a film about a single species because that isn't the way they are. Everything is interconnected. There's so many subplots, if you like. She was incredibly observant. She would say, hey, you know, look at this, there's something else going on here. And we'd be able to incorporate that into the story.
Joan and Alan were a complete unit. Alan was the sort of genius and Joan was the sidekick. They knew how each other thought. Joan had got the right lens out almost before Alan asked for it.
Both of them loved what they were doing. She knew exactly what was needed, and she presented it. Anybody who saw films like that, it was new.
Millions of people around the world watched the Roots films and now wanted to visit Africa.
Discover it. The wild is where you find peace, where you feel that nothing much has changed for the last 200,000 years.
By the late 70s, more than 250,000 people a year were flying to Kenya. Within the world of wildlife and conservation, the Roots were celebrities.
Completed last year, the film was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Feature
Extraordinary
Documentary.
patience and ingenuity, a husband-wife team of naturalist photographers has succeeded in recording the...
In 1959, Alan Root's biggest award was for this film, Serengeti Shall Not Die, in which he won an Oscar with cameramans Bernard Grimsmek and his son Michael Grimsmek. This was a huge introduction of the wildebeest migration, which interestingly, Alan Root was the first to capture the story of the great herds. In 1962, Alan started filming full-time for Aubrey Buxton and ITV's groundbreaking wildlife series Survival Anglia. And with his wife Joan, who was vital to the team's success, they did some of the most extraordinary wildlife films in East Africa, the Amazon rainforest, New Guinea, and Australia. With the success of a Galapagos adventure titled The Enchanted Isles, narrated by Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, the routes became independent, as the film had a royal premiere and therefore was one of the first wildlife films to be sold abroad. On the back of this success, Alan now went solo to Mazima Springs to film the enchanting story of the whole ecosystem, as the African spring is fertilised by hippo dung, which creates a pyramid of life.
Edging the springs is an occasional phoenix palm or a yellow thorn acacia that provides a convenient nest site for the sunbird, who builds over water and at the very end of suitably slender branches. In this way, it's fairly safe from predators. The young are fed on insects, and the mother always removes the droppings from the nest. A small and lightweight snake could reach and rob that nest. So the sunbirds scream at it and harass it. But no need to. This is a grass snake which feeds not on baby birds, but on frogs. The frog's instinctive defense is to remain frozen still. Then to jump for its life.
After the success of the two one-hour films Mazima and Baobab, the roots then went into the most exciting decade of them all for wildlife filmmaking, as Alan Root put it in his book, the 1970s, and turned his attention to the amazing wildebeest migration as they crisscrossed the African plains in search of fresh pasture.
So now, at last, the wildebeest are home, back on the plains, green and welcome in an April mist. Soon the year will turn full circle and the whole reckless spectacle will begin again. But now the herds are at peace with the grass, and a solitary bull grunting quietly on his new territory finds no challengers. This is the Olduvai Gorge, a deep winding gash that runs for miles across the eastern plains. The wildebeest cross it every year, but it's no obstacle for even the youngest calves. And the gorge itself testifies that they have been doing the same thing for some time. For Olduvai is rich in fossil remains. And some of the fossils show that wildebeest have been plentiful here for 2 million years, and during those 2 million years have remained almost unchanged. But there are fossils of another creature here too, one that started from shuffling ape-like beginnings and has become the most powerful creature on Earth, man. The wildebeest haven't changed in all that time. They haven't needed to. For though they may find some bizarre ways to die, they've also found a spectacularly successful way to live. The numbers that fall to predators, disease, and natural calamities are the very means by which members of the species are refined. The great herds go on. The whole flamboyant, chaotic spectacle actually works, and works well, year after year. But it's a way of life that demands space, enormous space. Space that one day will be needed by that other creature that grew up here at Olduvai. For now, the herds go on, careering headlong through 2 million years of history, theirs and ours, and scattering it as carelessly as they scatter their dead along the march. On they go, the wildebeest, the clown, and the king of the plains.
In Safari by Balloon, the next adventure, they accidentally crash land their hot air balloon into the Mara River and are met with frightening herbivores as they go on their journey upstream.
In the first case, we'd been blown off course and had come down in the forest high up on the Mara River. We had to load all our equipment into a rubber boat and make the journey back down the river. And because there would obviously be some excitement on the way, we got ready for filming. The buffalo was okay. I think the water was deep enough that there was no way he could have got to us. I figured our boat was big enough that we wouldn't have any trouble with the hippo. So in the narrow stretches, we just went straight through the middle of the schools. Then we spotted a mother elephant with her calf drinking on the bank. And again, I thought the boat was big enough that we wouldn't be attacked.
Around at the back, she's coming.
She could easily have killed us. With her small calf, she felt very vulnerable. So this was just her way of telling us to shove off.
God, look at those holes. She punctured one of the rear tubes as well. That's okay.
The other incident involving a balloon was our assault on Mount Kilimanjaro. It had never been done before. Kilimanjaro is the highest point in Africa. It meant we'd have to fly to well over 20,000 feet, which had seldom been done in a hot air balloon. We'd need special clothing and oxygen equipment. But because of our load limitations, we wouldn't be able to take parachutes. We were just going to have to put our necks on the line. We took off into a beautiful dawn. We were on our way, and now there was no turning back. It was like nothing I've experienced before. A slow-motion dance with the wind, 2 miles above the earth. The only thing keeping us up there was a beat-up wicker basket and a single gas burner. What with filming and flying, I had plenty to keep me busy, which is just as well. If I'd had time to think about the dangers, I certainly wouldn't have enjoyed that flight anything like so much. And then, 4 hours and 50 miles later, there it was, the extinct crater of Kilimanjaro. The difficulties and dangers gave an added kick to the pure exhilaration of the flight. I wouldn't have missed that trip for anything. For a balloon in Africa, it was the ultimate adventure.
In 1978, the route's next 1-hour epic was Castles of Clay, which told the story of life in and around a termite mound and showed the complete ecosystem.
The most typical of all silhouettes in Africa is not the giraffe or the classic flat-top thorn tree. It is the tall, castle-like shape of the termite mound. The insects that build these mounds don't look very interesting. They certainly don't look like a creature that dominates much of Africa, both in terms of numbers and their effect upon the landscape. The elephant will eat only 10% of this tree it has pushed down. The rest will be devoured by termites. The amount eaten by one individual is tiny, but they exist in numbers that defy the imagination. There are over 1 million wildebeest on the Serengeti. Even when they're spread out over the plains like this, it's a figure you can never really grasp. Yet to termites, 1 million is no more than one rather small family. Termites are blind, but they create some of the world's most graceful architecture. They are no bigger than match heads, yet the homes they build weigh tens of tons and may be over 20 feet tall. The pyramids and man's other great works are pathetic in comparison. The mounds are remarkable in their own right, but also they are focal points in the bush country, and they attract a great variety of visitors. Creatures like the aardvark and the aardwolf, and a whole alphabet of strange and specialized animals who come to the mound and call it home. This is the story of those mounds, of the extraordinary insect society that builds them, and the unlikely collection of creatures that use them as a source of food and shelter. This is the story of those incredible castles of clay.
Next time in part 2, we see Alan Roots's films in the 80s and 90s, his executive producer work, and his book signing to me. So take care and good night.